Nice to meet you, I am the Swarm. Pokemon is suing Palworld, and that's complicated and annoying, but Creature Collector. I don't know, I'm making it up as I go. Temtem was the first big Creature Collector game to catch my eye. There have been many, because it's easy to want a piece of that delicious Pokepie, which is, of course, a whole-ass Pokemon. In general, I think Temtem was fine. It may have been a bit held back by the MMO premise, but all in all, it was a fun time and a game that was willing to take something we love and try to improve it. Lord knows Game Freak and improvement have yet to meet. But all of that means nothing today. Temtem Swarm takes the shell of a Creature Collector and throws it on top of some really good Vampire Survivors clone gameplay. That's a lot of words, so I'll use a community term, bullet heaven. See, in a bullet hell, you have to dodge a lot of danger. In a bullet heaven, you are the danger. Like the many that have come before, you start each game with only a single attack. As you fight and level up, you can add more attacks and passive abilities, as well as add some synergies to go even further beyond! Oh, I evolved. At a glance, this concept seems like a really good idea. You're constantly raided by endless swarms of oncoming Temtem, and you get to control a handful of different choices to fight back. Certain Creature Collector staples come back, like type matchups, but for the most part, everything is just the same in name alone. For example, the attacks are still called techniques and the passives called gear, but they function exactly like they would in any other bullet heaven. And while a lot of it is done very well, it definitely isn't without fault. For one thing, it's based on a Creature Collector. Wait, that's not inherently a problem. I mean to say that Creature Collectors tend to create fan favorites. This is usually an argument as to why Pokemon should always include every single Pokemon in every single game, which is problematic, but not the point of this video. In this case, it's kind of a bummer that there will only be 13 usable families out of over 80. And that means that not only is your favorite unlikely to be in, but there's a chance your top 10 don't even make it in. But if you can put that problem aside, you're still left with a fun early access game. Oh, did I forget to mention that this game is still in early access? Yeah, quite possibly the most irritating thing about Temtem is returning with Swarm. There's certainly a lot of content in the game already to play around with, but it doesn't stop that feeling that this game will be a lot better when there are more options. But enough about what isn't here, what is? What gives this game an edge over its competitors aside from fan bias? Firstly, standard games are always 15 minutes long. Most games like this stick with anywhere between 15 and 30, but this one is always 15, which means shorter, quicker matches. This can be good or bad. It means that you're not as likely to have a crazy strong build going by the end, but at the same time you might not spend a good chunk of time doing nothing waiting for the timer to run out. The Temtem of it all makes a really interesting dynamic as well. In a lot of bullet heavens, you have access to a giant pool of everything all the time. In this game though, because each Temtem has a different type and limited access to techniques, each one is a completely different game, and it's a good way to limit games to playstyles you enjoy more. It can also be fun to see how some things translate depending on the character choice. For example, Crystal the Temtem and Inky are both Crystal type Temtem, with access to every Crystal type technique. But Crystal has a lot of emphasis on bulk, while Inky focuses more on cooldown and damage. This means that the same moves might be more or less useful depending on which one you play. I did mean to say they might be. Honestly, some moves are just better than others. There isn't a lot of need to focus on a build, but it can help, because oftentimes if you can just get that one OP move, you're all set. Don't let that ruin the fun though. It's all about experimenting and repetition until you can beat enough money out of your enemies to absolutely dominate the battlefield using the skill tree system. Each Temtem has their own skill tree, with skills ranging in price from 200 to 10,000 Pansun, the local currency. As you attempt and fail runs, you gain more and more through random drops and special achievements to start upgrading every aspect of your little guys. These skill trees too are unique to each playable character, with nodes that improve just about any stat you might need improved. It's cool to have them character specific, but it also means you're in for a big grind if you're looking to complete all of them. I've been avoiding talking about the type matchup system because I don't know how I feel about it. Games like this can be tough at times, and while you can definitely power up enough to take on anything as anyone, the type matchups do make a noticeable difference. It's nice to have the edge if you need it, but that does inherently mean certain characters will be better on certain stages. This matters because harder stages also give more money, and chances are you're going to spend a lot of time on those harder stages grinding for money. They do have a small solution in the form of the Psypark, which changes the available types every day, but that's not the highest money multiplier? What are you doing? Also, a bit of a nitpick, but I can't find any way to know ahead of time what types of Temtem I'll be seeing at the Psypark. So it might be entirely random every day, which is also annoying. And last but certainly not least might be one of my favorite changes to the formula: events. Every so often, while you explore and survive, events will pop up on the map begging for your attention. When you reach them, you can activate them, causing anything from high XP Temtem spawns to a circle that you must not leave for up to 30 seconds. It is wild. They're a bit imbalanced right now, and you definitely want certain ones to happen more often than others, but they're a great way to push players to move around. It's easy in these games to get strong and turtle up, doing nothing the rest of the game. But the rewards from these events can be very strong and make or break a run. If I had to say, most of my issues are probably just early access problems. There's a lot of stuff that could be slightly better, but it's stuff that they might just add into the game by the time it fully releases. For example, there's no way to increase the spawn rate of enemies like in Vampire Survivors. That might sound like a detriment, but if you're strong enough and start demolishing everything on screen, it's nice to be able to make more enemies because that means more XP. I want snowballs! Also, while the reduced move pool is nice on paper, it's also a bit too small right now, meaning a lot of runs will feel the same since you probably ignore all the techniques you don't like. But I could complain all day if nobody stopped me. And I will, just not on camera.
You should, totally subscribe, dude.